boss o ikeditse gore po wena o isutle ke leng a posa ba posa
Mamatlo o ikentse boss Mamatlo
weekend wa posa wa change wa posa a kitse wetsa mo
I'm in the house.
no ke tlo metsa 10 person one day
ke leng a posa ke mo shebeletse ke re ba itse bona mama o tsa a kitse busy
let's get a jwalo ka Mamatlo bana ke rate
no o loke ini early because ha o sa loke ini re tshwara bothata mama tlo ena ena boss being
Yeah,
in this platform mama tlo wa ra mo platform
O dira o ipura mara
wa ra bi o sa
good afternoon. Can we start recording?
Yes,
Yes,
Chair.
Chair, we can start.
Thank you. Good afternoon, honorable members. The Honorable Minister Mamutogo Didiza for joining us and temporarily taking leave from her cabinet responsibilities just to be able to give us opening remarks, and she will then be able to be excused immediately after I address leaving with us the officials of the department. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the department as led by the Honorable Minister, the Deputy Ministers and the DGs and the rest of the officials in the department, the entities that have been able to join us for this session. Also, let us welcome our guests that have been able to join in, and we will acknowledge them in the proceedings once we are clear to who has been able to join us this afternoon. Honorable members, welcome to the virtual meeting of the Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural. For this afternoon's session, requested the department to be able to give us a briefing on the third and fourth quarter performance and expenditure report of the former Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, that being DAFF, and as well as the implementation of the Audit Improvement Plan by ARC, that being the Agriculture Research Council. Will therefore, honorable members, take this opportunity to hand over to the Honorable Minister, Mamuti Diza, to give us opening remarks on this, and therefore delegate to the people who will be taking us through the presentations. Thank you. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members, senior officials and our guests. I would like again to thank you, Chair, and members for understanding that I won't be with you for a long period, but I've tried as much as I can to balance the two things, being in the cabinet as well as being with you in the portfolio committee. I do this because I know it is important that we must always, at all times, come to the portfolio committee to account for the work that we had said we will do to the nation. You will see, Chairperson, that today we account for quarter 3 and quarter 4 of the former DAFF. I must say that if you look at the two presentations, there is a better situation than we were last week. I'm sure you'll agree with me. I know there are certain areas where we might not achieve our targets, but overall in the main, we tried as much as we can to actually meet our targets. I must also say, Chair, that during the period, you know that towards the end of the year, actually the second quarter of last year, we had a problem of drought in a number of our provinces, KZN, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, Northwest, Western Cape, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo. And we actually engaged with the Department of COGTA, which took a bit of a long time because some of the provinces had not actually reported about the spending on the last allocations they were given for drought relief. I want to say, Chairperson, that finally we were able to get 131 million for all the provinces, which they must actually claim and draw down with the business plan. Unfortunately, during the intervening period when provinces were supposed to actually give us the relevant information, we then had the lockdown rather, and a number of provinces were not able to submit. We had negotiated then with Department of COGTA that we do not lose these allocations, but ensure that all the provinces that are affected submit their business plan. I want to report to you, Chairperson, that by last week, Friday, all the 7 provinces have presented us with their business plan in order to be able to draw down this amount. Tomorrow, we will be having a meeting with COGTA, our relevant officials, to actually finalize the disbursement of those resources. So I thought it was necessary for me to take the portfolio committee into consideration. You also note, Chairperson, that we had a challenge of foot and mouth disease in Limpopo, which we actually are going back to make sure that those 19 deep tanks, we will continue to actually ensure that we monitor, that they are able to ensure that there is no more the trace of the disease on those ones. The work still continues. In Bushbuck Ridge, we also had an outbreak of foot and mouth, which affected about 11 deep tanks. The 11th one was actually picked up last week, Chairperson. Containment has been done and as well as vaccination is going on. So we think it will be under control, but these 2 instances, Chair, you would appreciate that they've had an impact in terms of our FMD-free status in respect of the OIE, which therefore means trade on animal disease externally is not as good as we would like it to be, because a number of countries always monitor the disease management and surveillance in a number of countries. I must say that in working particularly with the Limpopo Provincial Department, they have indicated to us that the budget challenge is going to make it a bit difficult for them to continue with the surveillance work that they must do to ensure that we contain and manage the situation. We are actually going to be looking at what and how best can we assist the province, because if Limpopo and part of Mpumalanga in Bushbuck Ridge are not able to completely manage this disease, we are going to actually be affected in terms of our FMD status internationally. I also want to indicate that we had a meeting with the Eastern Cape. So far, they have indicated to us that the African swine fever has not gone wild in the province. They haven't had any reporting of massive death of pigs, and therefore the containment work that they've been doing and public education with the affected communities are bearing fruit. In the Free State, because we also had in the Free State an outbreak, even though to a limited extent, I wish to report to the committee that the Free State have been able to manage that process, and they've actually closed those areas which were affected, and we can report now new cases, and where there was these cases, those have been dealt with. Chairperson, I also want to indicate to you that in terms of our Africa responsibilities, we did have a meeting with the African Ministers of Agriculture on the 16th of April this year to look at the impact of COVID-19 on food security in the continent. We then agreed to set up a task force to actually do a detailed work of looking at how countries have been responding to ensure that we retain, a level of food security for our countries. We will be having a meeting now in July with the Ministers of Trade as well as with the Ministers of Finance, because some of the countries have had the difficulty on having better response mechanism on the food security challenge faced as a result of COVID-19. I just thought, Chair, I need to just give the brief outline to you about how far we've gone. With respect to DAFF, as you know, that now the fisheries wing and the forestry wing has gone to the Department of Environment, Fisheries and Forestry. What we will be reporting on Quarter 3 and Quarter 4 relates to those commitments that we made. As you know, that the actual transfer to the 30th or 31st rather of March 2020. So whatever was budgeted for and committed, you will see that it will be still reflected in our expenditure report as well as our performance in terms of Quarter 3, Quarter 4. I wish to end there, Chairperson, and hand over to the team to do the detailed presentation to the committee. I wish to say thank you. May be allowed to then tap out to the other meeting. When I finish, I will come back if the committee will still be in session. Thank you very much, Chair and members.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your opening remark with the other engagement in Cabinet. If we are still in session, you are most welcome to come back and join us. Honorable members, let us proceed with the officials who will then be leading us in the presentations. DG.
Honorable members, good afternoon, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon, Honorable members, my colleagues. As you know, I'm sure that to refer to Minister has made a pretty much good summary of what's happening within the department in the 1920 period. What's going to happen now is as a presentation of the validated report of Quarter 3, Q3, and the preliminaries of Q4. And that's what Joe is going to present. If you do not mind, Chair, I would then pass over to Mr. Hobukwe to do the presentation.
Please proceed, DG.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee, our Director General, Mr. Mlengana, colleagues, all of you, good afternoon. I will be making two presentations, Honorable Chair, and I will move with my colleague Alicia, who will be turning the slides for me as we move on. I'm presenting on Quarter 3 and 4, as the DG has already said. I must start off, Chair, by saying the two reports have already been submitted to DPME on the 29th of May. Normally these reports after the end of the fourth quarter are submitted to DPME at the end of April. But this time around, because of COVID-19, they were shifted for submission on the 29th of May. I must also indicate, Chair, that DPME has issued out a circular to all government departments, national and provincial, indicating that as from 2021 financial year, only validated performance will be reported on a quarterly basis. In other words, we will no longer have validated and preliminary. It will only be validated. I will present the two reports, Honorable Chair. However, with your permission, I will not spend a lot of time on the Quarter 4 preliminary, simply because, as it says, it is preliminary. I will spend a lot of time on Quarter 3, which is validated. I will do the non-financial part of the report, Honorable Chair, And my colleagues, the CFO, will do the financial part. And I'll also ask my colleague, Metso Sehole, if she's here, or Mekang, to do the HR part of the report. So we'll start with the report, Chair. May we go to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. In terms of the outline, Chair, that's the outline of the report. Most of these things members are already familiar with. I think that item 3 and 4 will be the most critical, and going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, performance highlights and performance against planned targets, where we will be demonstrating which targets were not achieved and the reasons for non-achievement. May we go to the next slide, please? I've already indicated that the purpose is to apprise members of the performance of the former DAFF, the 4 preliminary report. May we go to the next slide? The next slide, Honorable Chair, is just a depiction of our structural arrangement as we were configured up to March 2020 in the previous financial year. Members are already familiar with this structural arrangement. The next slide, please. In terms of this slide, Honorable Chair and members, this slide reflects or puts on the milestones that the department had for the entire financial year. This is a reflection on what each program of the department had to deliver on. But our focus, honorable members, is on the milestones of quarter 3 were 52 in total, and the milestones for quarter 4 were 65, all of them spread among the 6 programs of the department. The next slide, please. The next slide, which is very important to honorable members, is a reflection on how each program of the department performed. The first one is the Office of the Director General. The second one is Corporate Services, the CFO, Policy Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Agricultural Production, Health and Food Safety, Food Security and Agrarian Reform, Trade and Marketing, Forestry and Natural Resource Management, and Fisheries Management, which Minister has already talked about. That's the performance on the far right in terms of percentage. We can see that among all the programs, Fisheries Management is the one which performed the lowest. May we go to the next slide? The next slide, Honorable Chair and members, is a graphical representation of the previous slide. The green bars are a representation of the performance of the various as indicated in the previous slide. May we go to the next slide, please? Service delivery impacts. I must just indicate, honorable members, that the targets for quarter 3 and 4, which were implemented, were contribution to the achievement of the departmental strategic goals and objectives. Those ticks that you see represent the outcomes of the former Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. So these milestones, as I pronounced on them on the previous slide, are the bits and pieces which form a whole to contribute to those outcomes. May we go to the next slide? The next slide, Honorable Chair and members, is a reflection on the highlights as we reflect on Q3. I think it is important to mention that over and above, honorable members, achieving the milestones as stated, there are certain important deliverables which the department was engaged with. Firstly, we had a series of planning meetings internally towards producing our 2020-2021 strategic plan. As we know, members, that strategic plans are developed for every year 5 period. The 2019 marked the end of the previous administration, and therefore we needed to commence with the process of developing the strategic plan for the next 5 years. The other thing that is worth mentioning, PDAs and public entities also engaged in developing their annual performance plans, and as expected, these APPs of public entities were forwarded to the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. We looked at them, we commented on them, and we provided feedback to the public entities. The other thing that is worth mentioning, honorable members, is that we do have what we call transversal indicators. These are because agriculture is a concurrent function, between ourselves and the provincial departments. Therefore, we have to have those indicators that are common among the 9 provinces, and we refer to those as transversal indicators. So we commenced with an exercise of reviewing and looking again at these transversal indicators to see if they still fit with the mandate of the ruling party, the Cabinet Lekgotla resolutions, the NEC resolutions, and so forth. So we started with that process during Q3. And the last thing that is worth mentioning is that we intensified during Q3 intensified this important activity of data collection for our producer farmer register. So these are the highlights, honorable members, that are worth mentioning, what we have been able to do over and above the milestones during Q3. May we move to the next slide, please, Alicia? The next slide, honorable members, is what will interest members, because you would want to know why certain targets were not achieved for Q3 in particular. I will start with program 1, which is administration. If you look at this program, there are 3 milestones which were not achieved, honorable members. The first one relates to risk management strategy, which was to be implemented, which was to be developed and implemented fully. This deliverable, honorable members, was not achieved. Why? Because there was an agreement to say we are in Q3, we are left with 1 quarter before we merge with the former Department of Rural Development. Why don't we wait until we have merged and we develop one strategy for the newly merged department? The second one, honorable members, which has a similar reason, was the development of software, IT software for the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. And then a decision was taken to say, let us also wait, because we are about to merge, let us wait and rather integrate the 2 IT systems of the 2 departments into one and come up with the required softwares. And then the third one relates to unqualified audit. Honorable members, you'll remember that for the previous financial year, 2018-19, the department had obtained a qualified audit report of the Auditor General. And that was simply because of the activities which were linked to program forestry and natural resource management, particularly what is referred to as misstatements regarding biological assets in that branch. Now, what this target is saying is that much as financial statements were correctly compiled and submitted, but we're still wrestling. By Q3, we're still wrestling with this issue that was linked to the branch forestry and natural resource management, which relates to the handling of their biological assets. So there were still some gray areas there. If we may go to Program 2, Alicia, Program 2, which is Agricultural Production, Health and Food Safety. We've got about 3 targets there, honorable members, which were not achieved. The first one relates to mobilization of farmers within the parameters of 2 schemes which the department facilitated through the Agricultural Research Council. The first one is known as Kaonafatso ya Dikgomo, and the second one is the poultry scheme. Now, these were there were intentions to mobilize farmers with respect to these 2 schemes, but the program succeeded on mobilizing farmers only for the poultry scheme. There were hiccups and some hurdles in terms of Kaonafatso ya Dikgomo members, simply because you'll remember that DG Mlengana, I think previously indicated that we were wrestling with the payment of the ARC, which was outstanding. And because of that, I think there were associated problems which impacted on this target. But members, I think, have since been apprised of progress in terms of payment of the ARC. I think DG Mlengana did inform members about that. So that is the first one. The second one is managing surveillance actions to verify and analyze collected info of animal risks. It has been indicated, honorable members, that there were delays, in sending samples to the laboratory. I think previously when we were talking about this, the DDG responsible, Ntatara Masodi, explained this very, very, very well to members in terms of what actually happens and what actually caused the delays in terms of submitting samples to the laboratory. And because of those delays, this was not fully complied with. The last one, which was not achieved, members, relates to 6 export protocols for phytosanitary requirements, which were supposed to be implemented. Only 4 of those 6 were achieved, and the other 2 were not achieved, honorable members, relating to the USA and China. But it was not more on the fault of the program as such. It was because there was supposed to be an indication from those countries to say, now we are ready, you can send your teams. And that never happened up until the quarter came to an end. So that is in terms of Program 2, Honorable Chair and members. Program 3, there is nothing that we can talk about in terms of targets that were not achieved. Equally so, Program 4, there is nothing that we can talk about in terms of what was not achieved because the two programs achieved 100% each. Program 5, which is Forestry and Natural Resource Management, Alicia, yes, you are on the right slide. There were supposed to be 344 hectares planted in what is referred to as TUPs, temporary unplanted areas. And what was achieved, honorable members, was only 64.29 hectares which were planted. And the reason for this, honorable members, is what the minister has already touched on earlier when she talked about the drought which affected most provinces during this period. Many parts of the country were affected by drought. There was dryness and so forth, and as a result, many hectares could not be planted, as indicated under that part which is referred to as reasons for deviation. Then the next target, honorable members, which was not achieved was the draft recommissioning model, not achieved because of tender-related delays. There was a procurement process involved in this to achieve this target, and there were delays in terms of tenders. As members know that in many instances, tenders may be futile because of some technicalities, or there may be delays in terms of some technicalities and so forth, and this impeded the achievement of this target. The last program, Honorable Chair and members, is Program 6. It's got a number of targets which were not achieved. As we could see on that summary slide, it was only able to achieve 40%. There were supposed to be public consultations, honorable members, on Aquaculture Development Act implementation plan, but these public consultations were not conducted. And therefore this was not achieved because these were not conducted. The second one where they could not achieve is commercial fishing rights allocated. Policies and application forms were not revised. There was supposed to be a revision of government policies and so forth, and this was published in a government gazette, but through the orders of the executive authority before, those gazettes, government gazette notices were withdrawn, and as a result, those targets could not be achieved. The third one, Honorable Chair and members, is 1,600 inspections were to be conducted, and only 1,495 inspections were conducted. A total of 105 inspections were not conducted. But the reason which is given, honorable members, is because is that this is a demand, much as they set targets for it, but it is more of a demand-driven service. It depends on the demands from other quarters. So only 105 inspections could not be conducted. The next slide, Alicia. There was also to be 17 joint operations, honorable members, conducted with partners, including Operation Pakisa Initiative, and a total of only 14 joint operations were conducted. A total of 3 joint operations were not. And the reason for this is similar to the previous one, Honorable Chair. It is a demand-driven service. The next one is 71 investigations were supposed to be conducted. They normally conduct these investigations at sea, and they had targeted themselves to conduct 71. And but because it's a demand-driven, again, it's a demand-driven deliverable, they exceeded that target. Instead of 71, they conducted 75. May we go to the next slide, Alicia? The next one, Honorable Chair, allocation of rights to small-scale fisheries cooperatives. There were supposed to be fisheries fishing rights allocated to cooperatives based in Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, but they were not able to do those for Western Cape. They were only able to do those for KZN. It is because, honorable members, the whole process of the allocation of fishing rights was halted at the instruction of the executive, so that the entire process could be reviewed. And as a result, it could not be achieved. Now we are at the stage, Honorable Chair and members, where we have to tackle the HR related work of the department. And with your permission, Honorable Chair, may I request my colleague, Mr. Sehule, to run through the slides on HR for members. Metso.
Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me, honorable members?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Please continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you to you, honorable person and honorable members and honorable minister in absentia. I will be reporting on the human resources report, part of it, during the period under review as I was acting DDG for corporate services. In Q3, we had a post-establishment as the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries of 6,121 posts, of which 4,709 were filled. And we had a vacancy number of 1,412 because we could not fill vacancies due to the process of the NMOC and the looming merger. The vacancy rate increased from 21.7% in the previous quarter to 23.1%. We also, within the human resources, we also were responsible for the development of talent management strategy and also the workplace skills plan, which had to be approved by the Director General and that we had to also implement. And we also oversee the improvement of access to employee health and wellness programs. And lastly, the strengthening transformation capacity and implementation of diversity management. And all these areas of performance were overseen and achieved. Now, the next slide, slide 41, is on the HR dashboard, comparatively speaking, with the previous financial years. And I think of key would be the issue around the vacancy rate, which is the third line, that when we started to report in this 5-year period, we were sitting at 13.0%, and we actually managed the vacancy rate to the acceptable level of 10.0% in the year 2015-16. And you will recall that government started talking about managing the cost of employees, thereby requesting that departments should try to manage the number of employees. And the increases of vacancies then started to show. In the year 2016-17, we were at 10.5, which is quite acceptable. But the following year, 2017-18, because there was no movement in terms of filling of vacancies, except for those critical posts, then we were at 14.9% and then 19.5%. The next slide, please. Slide 42, I beg your pardon. This slide is comparing the vacancy rate within the quarter itself, those months, the month of October, due to natural attrition and also due to staff leaving the service. We were sitting at 22% vacancy rate in November, 22.7%, in December, 23.1%. This is on slide 43. It is the age profile as in quarter 3. The veterans, we had 286 of those, and the next layer, the between 55 to 59 that should be taking over, we have quite a good number, which is 786. But then the 50-year-olds, 50 to 54, is 790, which means that there is some form of handing over that will be taking place in the department. Of importance is that in the youth group, we do have quite a strong presence. Between 35 to 39, we have 756, and then the next group, 40 to 44, is also 756. So in terms of succession planning, the department has got quite a good profile. Then slide 44. This is the SMS profile in terms of race and gender. Currently, in terms of the male, we have quite a high number of male versus a number of female, which is a situation that we hope that now that we have matched and we have that high percentage of over 23% vacancies, we will have an opportunity to correct that. 54% male versus 46% female. And we need to work that percentage to 50%. The next slide, please. This is the pie chart on the equity by race and also by gender. There's quite a high number of African male and also followed by a number of African female, which just shows that there is of that gap. We have done well in terms of the Indian because it's quite fine, it's 1%, and the other percentages are also, we are not doing very bad. And as I said, we have the opportunity with the vacancies to make sure that we do balance the profiles, particularly on the gender. HR issues on the radar, that is on slide 46. With the implementation of the macro organizational strategy of government, we have prioritized that certain work streams within the department, particularly HR work stream, should assist in the department. And that work stream of HR is going to assist us in finalizing the merger and making sure that we have a correct structure that will support the new Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. And in fact, the HR work stream had assisted in helping us to have a startup structure. HR governance environment has been improved as the HR delegations between the minister and the DG have improved, therefore allowing the DG to take certain responsibilities. We have implemented early retirement without penalization of pensions. That offer that was open until September last year, we just need to finalize that. And then we have also implemented the workplace skills plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If Chair will permit, may we request the CFO or his delegate to quickly run through the expenditure slides with your permission, Chair.
In 2 minutes, may have questions of clarity from the honorable for questions and answers. So 2 minutes in brief. Continue.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to the honorable members and deputy ministers and the minister in absentia and the colleagues. The slide that is in front of us is around economic classification. We are showing a budget of 7.6. By the end of December, we had spent 5.7, which accounts for 75%, which is in line with our straight line budgeting. Next slide. Then the next few slides talk about our budget against the targets that we have. I will go past those slides. Can you go past them, please? Next slide, please. And then this is the expenditure report for Q3. We spent around 1.8, which accounted for 28%, 24.8%. Next slide. And then it's the same slide, but now looking at the economic classification versus the program in the previous slide. Next slide. And then in the next slides, we indicate the reasons for the underspending and overspending. I will just touch base with Program 2. Program 2, we had an overspending because we made a payment of 25 million to ARC, and that was not part of the budget. And until the end of December, that was contributing to the overspending around Program 2. Next slide. We can go past that one as well. And then I want to touch base with this slide, which talks about the expenditure for each quarter. The first quarter we spent 25.5, and then the next one it's 25.1, and then the next 8, which amounted to 78.8. Next slide, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the presentations. Yes, who's that?
Chair, I wanted to say, Chair, in terms of Q4 preliminary, really there isn't much except slide 5 and 6, which actually is a summary of the performance. But if Chair doesn't want us to go there because of time, that will still be fine. But I thought that that could just be the slide which is shown to members. In less than a minute, we will be done.
If you can take less than a minute, then we can have that. Go ahead.
Okay, Alicia, can you show it, please? Alicia?
Afternoon, DDG. It's on the screen.
It's not on the screen.
It's not on the screen. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alicia. Honorable Chair and members, that is the summary of the milestones. If you look at the last but one column, 65 in total. May we go to the next slide, Alicia? The next slide, honorable members. I cannot see clearly. Can you lift it up? I've got some icons here that are that is the performance of the different programs. I cannot clearly see that total on the corner. Alicia, can you mention it, please, for me? The total.
Okay. Thank you. Let us move to the honorable members for questions so that we can attend to the answers. We can see the slide ourselves on that is displayed. So
Okay.
can we take the presentation off and head back to the forum for the meeting?
Thank you very much.
Honorable members, there's a briefing from the department on the third and fourth quarter performance plan. If you may then proceed with questions, we'll begin with Honorable Kabe.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chair, thanks so much. I don't know, my screen goes on and off. Chair,
we can see you and we can hear you clearly.
Oh, perfect. Chair, on quarter 3, I heard Ndate Khobokwe talking about the future, that in future from 2021 we will not have reports that are not validated. It becomes difficult also for us today. There was progress on non-achieved targets from quarter 3 to quarter 4 because we don't know how huge the difference will it be. My prayer will be that it could be just a minimal difference so that as and when we finish here, we know precisely where are we standing with the department. And I wonder from yourself, Chair, that being the case, does it mean we'll still go back to quarter 4 because it was just touched on and it's not validated? What gonna be the stance from this meeting? In all fairness, transversal indicators, Dr. Khobokwe has indicated that they've been reviewed from quarter 3. Based on our previous engagements, they have already tabled or presented the strategic plan for the next 5 years. How far has this process gone? Are there any changes on the previous transversal indicators? Have they been included in that strategic plan, or are we going to sit with something that has been reviewed and it does not appear anywhere else again? What is the thing? What has the progress on this one? Chair, there are 2 targets that have been put on hold because of the measure. Risk management, the software IT. I don't see the reason why this was supposed to be put also on hold. Because, Chair, for an example, if you talk about risk management, the generic process are the same. You talk about identification of risk, identifying solutions, and monitoring the results. Now, if you have to put something on hold, it affects your performance, then you have to wait for measure. If Dr. DLR had to come on board and it becomes one, it could have just been adjusted or adapted. So it doesn't hold much water for me to say that has been put on hold because of the measure. We spoke about previously the use of IT that is necessary because they can't even trace their invoices from service providers, and it becomes difficult to run such a department without IT software. So My prayer, Chair, and my submission is that they must work on these ones and shouldn't bring the issue a measure as a thing, as a reason. How far is the farmer register? Are we going to see farmer register being closed at some stage? What is their target? Are they gonna say at some stage we have reached the target that we wanted? What is the target, or what are they planning to do with the farmer register? Or is it something in perpetuity going forward? Chair, I'm concerned also about the risk surveillance, inability to achieve that. The minister opening remarks indicated the containment or the need for containing this risk in animals, the diseases that affects international trade protocols. The department will have to say to us, how are they going to move with this forward? And coupled to that, Chair, I want to hear from them today. There's this thing here, culling animals due to swine fever, the pigs, and there's no compensation. It has never been there, it's not part, but what is the plan of the department in assisting such small-scale farmers? Others have just been assisted because of COVID. Those that you cull their animals because of these diseases, what happens to them? Are they finished? They can't do anything anymore because the animals were sick, needed to be culled. On the other hand, you are unable to live to the expectation of attaining disease surveillance. What is happening? What is the plans moving forward? Chair, I think I must stop there and give others a chance. Thanks.
Thank you. Can we take the presentation off, and can all the honorable members mute their microphones? Can only unmute when you are speaking, and please switch on your video when you do speak. Honorable Kappa.
Let me go. Thank you, Chair. Only one. On this part of the HR, the figures there were comforting, and I also want to remain comfortable now with those figures. I wanted to understand if these ratios were according to plans, that these ratios that we have so many youth, so many women, and so on and so on. So that they are, it should be known that is something that has been planned, that is sustainable. Because if not, if it's just spontaneous or accidental, it will mean that they will have at some stage regress. But I want just to get this comfort that this is according to the plans that it is being achieved and in comforting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Stein. Honorable Stein.
Chairperson, I think she's yet. I don't see her in participants.
She had said, Chair, that she would be on and off.
Mbabama. We'll come back to her. Let's move to Honorable Mbabama.
Chair, I have two questions. The first one is that there was 50 million that was budgeted for monitoring of the two diseases, foot and mouth and one other, for risk and surveillance, but only 1.2 million was spent. Could the department please expatiate on that, if they may? Why was only 1.2 million spent on such a very important risk and surveillance strategy? And then secondly, Chair, under Program 1, no, let me leave that one. I would also like to know more, even though under Program 4, they got 100%, but I would really like to know more about what is happening under the Agri-BEE Fund and the Agri-BEE Sector Code. Could they please just explain to us what is happening there? I understand that they've reached their targets 100%, but could they update us on what is happening? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matias. Honorable Matthias. Honorable Montwedi.
Chair.
Honorable Montwedi.
Yes, I'm here, Chair.
Please go ahead, Dade.
Dumelang. Chair, I just want to raise one thing in this report that we have received from the department. It's a very serious worry that the minister raised when she made the opening remarks, when she spoke of the 131 million that they are busy unlocking and that provinces have submitted their business plan, and said about 7 provinces have actually submitted their business plan. It's a worry because one, I've been in contact with farmers in the Northern Cape province. I want to specifically speak about Richveld, Rechtersveld, which is 65 kilometers from the Alexander Bay in the Western Cape. The situation is very dire there. They've never received any support from government. Both small and large stock are dying on daily basis, Chair. I've written a letter to the minister about that situation. Nothing is actually. There are also, the report is that most of the Northern Cape farmers were not actually approved on the COVID-19 applications. Now, it adds to this in the Northern Cape, where drought has hit that province very hard. and another thing, Chair, is that I want to ask from the department, have they ever issued 30 Rand vouchers? I'm saying 30 Rand vouchers to farmers in the Northern Cape in assisting them to mitigate against the effect of drought. Because if you give a person 30 Rand, and what do you expect that person to do with that 30 Rand, Chair? The last thing, Chair, is on kaonafatso ya dikgomo. The DG Lengani has been speaking a lot about this program, even in Parliament. But I see that there are challenges around the contracting between provincial departments and HRs and ARC. I want to know, how do you agree to implement a program where there are no contracts that are already signed? And when we are expecting you to deliver on what we have promised, you are then saying there were delays in the contractual agreements between the ARC. How do you agree on a program and you have not signed agreements on that, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, the protocol is that we must see your face and the face of the speaker. Would we please have the people muting their video and their microphone as well if they are not speaking? Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I've already made that request. And I will echo it again. Can we please ensure that our microphones are muted and our videos are off? Let us proceed, honorable members. Honorable Mahlo.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question here, let me also greet all the members in the committee, including the minister, the minister in absentia, and the deputy minister, including yourself, Chairperson, and my whip. Chairperson, my question is with regard to, will be a question that is based on the side 13 and 22 of program 3, which will be read as follows: Marketing of Agricultural Products Amendment Bill and the Preservation and the Development of Agricultural Land Bill were not submitted to the minister according to the way I saw it. Instead, Agriculture Producer Agencies Bill and the Perishable Export Control Bill, all those 4 according to my understanding. Can the department explain to us what are the reasons for this deviation? And the other one, Chairperson, 21 veterinaries were not deployed, and this is because the 21 students failed their exams. When I look into one of the documents, is there any support that the department intend to help those students, given the importance of having many who are well qualified as veterinaries as part of ensuring that they realize the full transformation of the agricultural sector in the country. Chairperson, the last one is with the issue of when they were presenting, they mentioned to us that there was an outstanding issue that the outside countries did not respond for them to implement certain things. So we just wanted to check, what did the department do to get information about those other outside countries that did not respond? What did they do? Did they have anything that they did to show us that they did a follow-up? What is also the department doing about the climate change in our country? Because we don't hear anything that talks about climate change in our country when they talk about drought in other provinces that they're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlo. Honorable Mahlati. Ma'am Mahlati.
Thank you, Chair. Is my camera on, Clown?
Not yet, but you are audible. Can you switch on your camera?
It is on my side. I'm not sure what's happening.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. My questions are around, I've got only 2 questions. One is directed to the DG, directly to the DG, that given that the department is unable to perform, and one of the reasons being administrative issues relating to tender process, what then becomes your attitude in as far as consequence management is concerned? 2, what then becomes a mitigating process in as far as the department inability to achieve targets on issues that are administrative in Gestal? On quarter 3 and 4, Chair, can the department indicate, make us understand the corresponding performance and financial performance? According to quarter 3, they've got they spent 75.8% in terms of their money. But this does not translate directly to the performance of the department. In quarter 4, they spend 97.8 on their financial money as per their financial performance. But this does not correlate with the performance of the department. Therefore, what is DG and Minister saying, given that you can't have 2 million spend it, but you can't show where you spent it on? We want to know, where have they spent this money on? Chair, I want Umama, the one who was presenting, to explain to us. She spoke about 1,412 vacant posts. Are these funded vacant posts or just vacant posts in J, or are they not funded? If they are funded, why were they not filled? And if they are they plan to fill them, and what are the reasons why they were not filled, and whether these posts will they be filled in the new financial year, because this is quarter 3 and quarter 4. Lastly, Chair, I want to check with the department. I did not hear the presentation on audit findings, or is it still coming, Chair?
Which ones?
The audit findings. I did not. Are they still going to present on it?
I should think that it will be covered
Later. Okay, I'll bring my question on the audit later on then, Chair. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlati. Honorable Briet.
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe just to start with questions based on what the Minister alluded to, and I really want to thank her for the overview she gave. I think it was all topics that we were dying to hear comments about. In terms of the drought, Chairperson, just to add to my colleagues, I would like to know whether the department can indicate to us who are those 7 provinces that applied for drought relief, and in terms of that 139 million rand, how will that be distributed in between the provinces? I read somewhere that the Western got a letter notifying them that they would receive 25 million rand of that 139 million rand. If the department can maybe just clarify that, and then I would like to see feedback after the discussion tomorrow with COCTA regarding the disbursements, because as you've seen, Honourable Muntwedi has posted on our WhatsApp group, the drought is and the need is really bad at this stage, and we need to ensure that our farmers are assisted as quick and as effectively as possible. And then, Chairperson, maybe just alluding to, I think Honourable Slape also mentioned it, in terms of the foot and mouth disease and our external trade that has not gone so good. How is the department envisioning, are we working with trade and industry? How will we actually pick this up and improve on our exports in terms of meat and meat-related substances and recovering from FMD. Chairperson, then maybe just to speak to Q3. Firstly, I would just like to raise on point 9, on page 9, the speak targets and plans being aligned to the ruling party's plans, and we have mentioned that before, and I've raised that before. Should we not rather, seeing as this is a portfolio committee and the department is not an ANC department, it is a South African department and a government department, should we rather not align to our NDPs? And they briefly alluded to that, but I would really just like to state my worry that we are aligning to the ruling party and not necessarily to government and what South Africa needs. Chairperson, then in terms of risk management, I think Honourable Mokhlati mentioned that I would like to see a time frame. The department has now said that we've benched it up until we've merged, but we have now merged. So what is the time frame in terms of a risk management strategy to actually have that on the table? Chairperson, my worry is monitoring and evaluation, specifically monitoring, taking into account Limpopo, but all of the other facets that the department is monitoring and evaluating and are continually not achieving our targets. How is the department foreseeing that in the new financial year we will ensure we do proper monitoring and evaluation? And I would specifically like to know, the presenter mentioned that certain targets were not met due to lockdown, but I mean lockdown ended on the March, and that was 5 days during, before the financial year ended. So which targets were not reached because of lockdown? And then maybe page 26, just to know, the department mentions that 60 agro-processing entrepreneurs were trained. I would like to know, maybe we can get a breakdown and maybe in writing what they were trained in exactly, and as well, what are we doing? Now we have these agro-processing entrepreneurs that have been trained, but what are we doing with them? Are we assisting them to actually start up the agro-processing businesses, or what is now happening to them? And then maybe just as a last positive, Chairperson, before I say thank you, I'm really pleased by HR to see the good succession planning and the number of youth that have actually been incorporated. And I really wish that we could see this within our entities, specifically as this has been a continual problem. And I really do hope that even though we have so much youth, that the skills transfer from the older generation proceeding out will actually be done, so that we don't have that vacuum when they leave. Thank you, Chairperson. That is all from my side.
Thank you, Honourable Brett. But I'll bring you to the realization that this is a multi-party portfolio committee on agriculture, land reform and rural development, which holds accountable the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development in the Republic of South Africa. Unfortunately, there is no party in the Department of the Republic. So that is where our focus is in holding and carrying out our mandate. Let us, honorable members, move on to Ndabezitha Inkosi Ucebekhulu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, and all members as well. Chairperson, my question is around the improvement of the communal land or fertile communal land in the former homeland areas. The department has been saying this time and again, Chairperson, but all I want to just to find on behalf of the committee is that can they give us an estimate of the hectares done to improve food security and as well to be enlightened on which provinces have benefited out of that program. That's my question, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ndabezitha Kosenkulu Kacebekhulu. Can we have the Honorable Mbata? Honorable Mbata.
Yes, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I don't have much because most of the things have been asked, but I just want you to know if the department has a disaster management plan where especially the issue of drought and so forth, the climate change, because climate change, it's a continuous problem and they must have a climate change. And I think they've also asked the question of the distribution of the fund relief. I'm also interested in that. And then the other thing, where they didn't meet their targets, they need to give us the corrective measures on those challenges. Like the one that I'm interested on is the one that the challenge around contracting between the provincial department on page 19 and the ARC, which caused delays on mobilization of farmers and data collection for the two animal improvement schemes, Dihomo and poultry. That's very important because I had some concern when it comes to provinces that how does the department monitor it, the actual implementation, because that's where the provinces do the implementation, and it's very important for us to know what is happening because we see things happening but they are not happening correctly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mbata. Has Honorable Stein managed to get back online? Honorable Stein. Honorable Stein. Okay, if not, let us request through the DG that we hand over for answers. And we hope that all the questions have been noted. Those that will not be answered can be answered in writing. All of the questions we will request for them to be sent back to us in writing as well. DG and the officials of the department, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks. And I think I will direct most of the questions to my colleagues and then deal with those that they are not going to handle, such as risk management, correlationship between expenditure and performance, and more of those that have to do with program one. But the ones that have to deal with individual subsections of the departments, I will then allow the colleagues to answer. For example, through your permission, Chair, deal with the question that Metlabe asked on transversal indicators, and there was issue on IT software. One of my colleagues there from HR will deal with that. Farmer register, Joe, we have been handling that. Indeed, the question is a relevant one. How far are we moving on this electronic register? Risk surveillance, we'll deal with it. Mr. Ramasoda, I think, can take that. On biosecurity, the killing and non-killing of animals. I'm just making an example. And I'm assuming that colleagues, you have been taking note of the questions as I did. Those you are jumping, I will answer them as part of the conclusion on our side, Chair. So can I hand over, Chair, with your permission?
Before you hand over, DG, sorry, before you hand over, I failed to recognize Honorable Masipa, and I believe he is online with us. Please bear with me. Let us recognize the Honorable Masipa. Honorable Masipa.
Okay.
Ndate Masipa. He has raised his hand to ask a question. I'm waiting for him to come online. Honorable Masipa.
We can see you, but we can't hear you, Honorable Masipa.
Honorable Masipa. Okay, I will ask you to send your questions directly on the WhatsApp group, and I will raise the questions on your behalf. DG, please proceed to the officials you've delegated to may proceed.
Yes, colleagues, take the questions as they arose, and I made examples of those questions as they relate to your various sections in the department.
Thank you, DG, and thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I will respond to the question by Honorable Klape. She inquired about future reporting. In response, Honorable, DPME has issued out a circular of guidelines to indicate that going forward, we will no longer have preliminary and validated. We'll only have validated. In other words, we will no longer be able to come to the portfolio committee to present on the preliminary. And the time arrangements, as you will remember, Honorable Klape, that previously it was 90 days for validated and 30 days for preliminary. That has also changed. So it will be 30 days after the quarter has ended. We must be able to present validated, which therefore means that we really have to put our ducks in the row. We have to get ourselves organized, more organized in terms of validating information. As soon as we have received it, dealing with issues of evidence, it must happen within 30 days. The next question which Honorable Klape asked was, how far is the farmer register? The farmer register is at a very advanced stage, Honorable. By the time the COVID-19, as I indicated, as I was presenting, during Q3, it really gained the momentum in terms of data collection. And we were moving at a very good speed. And by the time the COVID pandemic broke out, we had collected just over 80,000 farmers, more than 80,000 farmers. We have this database in our national department here. It can be demonstrated to members what type of information we've collected. We are not very far off, honorable members, in terms of our target. We have since received the targets from Statistics South Africa in terms of smallholder farmers who produce for consumption, but also for markets. And the target is 135,000. And in that regard, we are not very far. Just this week, Honorable Tlapen members, we decided that we must resuscitate the project. This coming Friday, we will be meeting with the extension heads, and we have already written to HODs to say we are resuscitating the project so that we can bring it to conclusion. But although we'll do it under very strict health measures, but we have to resuscitate it so that we conclude it. The other questions, Chair, I think risk management and IT software, why was it put on hold? I think Mayor Tsosehole can answer that one. And payment for farmers for culling their animals, I think that Ramasodi can respond to that. I'll come back later on other questions that are related to me. Thanks, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Tsosehole. I will answer on the APP that relates to the ICT software. In essence, it is an application or a system that we were intending to develop in the previous financial year, and that system was the invoice tracking system. And we had actually started doing the business analysis, engaging with the Office of the CFO to check what is it that they want the system to do. And then we did some kind of benchmarking, and we engaged with sister departments to find out if they have that invoice tracking system so that we can look at the characteristics of that system before we develop it in-house. We were at a point where we received a demonstration of that invoice tracking system, incidentally from the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. At that time, the proclamation came that Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries would cede some functions and would merge with rural development. And the fact of the matter is, it meant that we are going to have one CFO, and that CFO was going to use the invoice tracking system from one of the departments, the other department being rural development. Therefore, it became futile to pursue that project of developing an invoice tracking system. And then on the issues around HR, there's quite, thank you, honorable members. There were issues of value adding, there were issues around complementing, which I'll pass on to the staff. But then there was the main question of the over 1,000 vacancies. Unfortunately, as I said, we could not fill the vacancies because of the moratorium, and that because DPSA had said with the merger, because government is actually reducing the number of departments, which means that there's going to be a pool of officials that are in addition to the establishment. We will need to look into that pool of additional officials and place them accordingly and follow a process of training them. And thereafter, then we can open up and I believe that as we develop a strategy and a fit for purpose structure for the new Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, those vacancies would be open and this matter would continue to be presented here before the portfolio committee. I think that is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ramasodi, can you take the issue of surveillance, risk surveillance when it comes to biosecurity? And I wish to also state that in the context of the viruses that are emerging, maybe we need to talk about what are our plans with respect to that threat. It's an emerging threat that may come. Are we having any plans with respect to how we can manage and proactively manage viruses that are coming up from an OBP standpoint as part of surveillance and the effective management of biosecurity with respect to current diseases, FMD, and African swine fever and bird flu? Go ahead, Mr. Ramasodi, through you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG. And good afternoon to Honorable Chair and Honorable members. I will try to sum the questions that were there and try categorize them in terms of the area where they fall into in order to save time. Honorable Tlape asks about the issues relating to surveillance and what are the plans. And coupled with that, I think Honorable Mbabama also asked in terms of the spending. So I'll deal with those in one. In terms of surveillances, the department has got a framework. This framework is used to outline notifiable diseases that would be surveyed for in a particular year. This framework also dictates how many samples should be taken by a particular province. And from those samples, we also have got a link with the ARC, which does all the tests for the country. And from there, we also do the final outline in terms of the surveillance report. Now, in terms of all the programs that we are having in the department, each and every surveillance program, whether it's FMD, whether it is brucellosis, has got a framework that deals with that. So those plans are there. And broadly, we also coming up with what we call a biosecurity plan that would deal with the issues of biosecurity in the country. And as you would also note, and honorable members, that in line with the outbreak of COVID-19, there are a lot of questions that are now being asked in terms of the impact of wild game in terms of zoonotic diseases. So we also, through the ARC, also starting to look at those aspects. On the issue that was asked by Honorable Babama, yes, rightly noted, the 50 million. Also packed there is the issue around buying of vaccines, which we did later on, and the issue also of taking care of the fences relating to FMD. So it's a broad brush of issues that are packed under surveillance. Regarding the culling of animals, Honorable Clark, the Animal Diseases Act prescribes that where animals are culled, compensation may be provided for in terms of Section 19. But what is currently happening in terms of the African swine fever is that once an animal is infected, there is no way that that animal would live beyond that infection. So there's that element. And what we are currently doing together with industry is looking at how can we make sure that we restock instead of saying that we are compensating, because in terms of compensation, it's not something that would be provided for, because obviously no animal was killed. It would have, in any case, naturally would have died from the disease. The only thing that we can do is to apply control measures to prevent the disease from spreading to other areas. And that would also go for other diseases that are viruses that impact on the sector. Honorable Montwedi had asked a question around the drought, and I think that Honorable Great had also aligned with that question. The Rechterveld issue, where we have got drought, yes, and I've also seen those pictures. And I would like to indicate that there has been a response in terms of minister's intervention. I would like to indicate that the following provinces have been allocated funding in line with the National Disaster Management Center. The first one, the Northern Cape, will get 36 million. The Eastern Cape would get 35 million. The Western Cape, as rightfully said by Honorable Brett, would get 25 million. The Northwest Province would get 8 million. Limpopo would get 18.5 billion. Mpumalanga would get 12.5, and KZN would get 4 million. Now, this is in line with the assessments that were done by the provinces and sent in to the National Disaster Management Center. Gauteng and Free State were not allocated. Now, the issue around the 30 rands vouchers, Honorable Montwedi, just came into the new area through the amalgamation with the area that deals with disaster management. I am not aware of it, and therefore I would like, if you have got any indications, to share that with me so that I can check what is transpiring with the province. On the issue of contracting with the ARC, let me just indicate that rightfully said by Honorable Montwedi, at a time where it's outlined that the framework has been included in the APP, the CASP framework had already indicated the contracting CASP framework. We already agreed that all provinces would set aside money relating to Kaunafatso ya Dikgomo, and what was left was just to ensure that all contracts were signed off by HOD. So the contracting was already in terms of the framework for KYD. The next questions from Honorable Mahlo, yes, it's very important, and I think what we have also realized in terms of that APP on the students is the support to the student, but also ensuring that the APP would read to say that 100% of those who qualify, instead of giving a specific number, because ultimately we are not in control in terms of whether the students would be passing or failing for that matter, but we can also influence in terms of ensuring that there is enough support for the students. There is an issue around climate change that Honorable Mahlo had raised. If we look at the APPs that were submitted for financial year, there's an issue around the implementation of climate change adaptation and mitigation plan. So we have already indicated that in line with the input. On the bills that were highlighted, I think the issue around the PPCB, let me just touch on that one. The bills were already passed through in terms of the clusters within government, and unfortunately there was no time in the fifth administration to look at that particular bill. In terms of the preservation of land, PDALF as we call it, there were hiccups in terms of discussions at NETLEC, and that bill now is part of the bills that would be considered during this period in this year, and it has been submitted to the Leader of Government. The Honorable Matlatsi, I think the issue that you have raised around the correlation between performance and management is very important. I think the other element that is there is the correlation between performance, its impact, and in terms of your own intervention, the management, the performance of management per se. And I would like to indicate, and I'll highlight just only one issue that is of importance, that at some stages, it is just that the targets that were set, for instance, if in the cases where we will use a case that was asked even today, where we say we will look at 6 protocols in a particular quarter, and only 4 during that quarter are being utilized by the industry. It doesn't mean that the department did not expand in terms of the work that is there. It only means that at some stage, due to demand, the demand was not met. And I think that's something that is very important. And I strongly align with that issue to say, even if the performance can be 100, the issue should be around the impact that that performance has. On the issues around the picking on the exports, there has been engagements with the industry, the red meat industry, value chain in totality. We had meetings with them today, and we're coming up within the agriculture and agro-processing master plan. We're coming up with interventions to ensure that there is recovery through the red meat value chain on issues of importance to this value chain. And I think that the issue that was asked by Honorable Mpata on provisionalization has been taken up. The last issue that I would like to talk to is the issue that I've already touched based on the export protocols. Now, the two export protocols that were not met for China and for the US. And Mr. Kobokwe, in his presentation, he says maybe the countries did not want. I think it goes broader than that. It's also demand driven. If the incentives in terms of exporting to those countries are not considered to be lucrative by industries, the industries would not necessarily take those protocols for a particular year. And that has also taught us a very good lesson this year in terms of how do we then craft that APP in a way that it would reflect correctly. Thank you very much, DG, Honorable Chair, and Honorable Members.
Thank you, Mr. Ramazzotti. Thank you, Chair. I think, Mr. Ramazzotti, you sort of ran through most of these issues, some of them more in detail, some of them up. I think there is an issue that has been burning, and I've been speaking to quite a lot, which is the KYD issue as it affects the RC. I think ECO will talk in specific terms about the amount of money we've paid the RC, about 52 million. 3 million, I'm made to believe, has not been paid because of invoices that the RC must still submit. I think the issue of performance in relation to expenditure goes beyond just the issue of protocols. I think it has to do with how we also have allocated our budget. And about 45% of our budget is transfers. And one thing that is going to face the Department of Agriculture pretty much, and I think Mr. Makratsi, and Honorable Makratsi, have referred to this when we initially met with the PC, namely that at what point does national DAFF becomes accountable? And that issue eludes us and everyone because of functions. And we can't put our hands on the ground. And the consequence of that is lack of service delivery. All we do is to monitor. And if the province decide to do what it wants to do, we are not going to be able, but yet we are accounting for the expenditure that goes there. And there's quite a lot of money that we are offering to the provinces. And we are not accounting for the impact of those funds. The second one is the issue of trade. And I think as I will depart in the department, this is the lifeblood of the department. For example, China has already signed protocols for us to export. We are not exporting, for example, we're supposed to be exporting the pears. We've signed that protocol. We're supposed to be exporting the ostrich meat. We've signed those protocols. Similarly, we've signed protocols with other countries who are saying, bring this to us. And I think we would need to focus on this. This is what we call foreign exchange, especially when the dollar is becoming, the dollar and other currencies are becoming to be more expensive to us. And I think I would suggest the committee spend a lot of time on this. The second one is the issue of risk management and risk analysis. We cannot deal with our strategies their effectiveness if we do not understand the risk that faces us. One of the reasons why the risk register and strategy could not be done for DAFF and because I was heading this, I'm heading this one, is particularly the issue of capacity, people to actually write that strategy and interact with line management so that they've got line of sight of the risks that are facing each branch, such as, for example, the proactive management of diseases. It's a risk that is facing us. How do we begin to say, these are the strategies that are proactively going to stop FMD? These are the strategies that are going to stop this particular and that disease. And I think that question of the correlation between expenditure and performance is a question that is alive, and the impact of performance in terms of behavior change to those we want to go to. Did we improve poverty? Did we alleviate poverty as a consequence of our expenditure of public money? And I think that needs to be addressed by this committee, because DAFF seems we have sitting and say our job is simply to regulate and monitor, and that's all we do as DAFF, and we set all the strategies. But we cannot account to the effective implementation of those strategies and their impact. And I think this question deals with that issue. It deals with that issue, and this issue is going to be the lifeblood in my view. And I think the issue of drought and climate change in particular, Chair, as I'm concluding on this, is going to be facing us. We've got climate smart agriculture, the whole thing that deals with soil erosion, environmental management, and land care of any agriculture, that where land must be managed, soil erosion, fire bans, felt management, those are critical, especially in drought areas. So the strategy around drought and felt management is going to be critical. What I do not know, I'm not sure I understand, and the other one is Agri-BE fund. I can say on Agri-BE, we have been able to shortlist. However, we have not complied with the actual act in the Agri-BE space. We actually, instead of acquiring assets to ensure that we empower economically the Black emerging or entrepreneurs, we actually went to buy assets that were actually of no value. And then we went into what they call agro-processing. We began to buy processing machineries instead of acquiring assets. And we are saying, why didn't you go and buy assets? So Minister said, because we are lacking in spending this money. Let us go and make sure that we can do agro-processing in as far as agro entrepreneurship is concerned, instead of acquiring assets, because we do not have time for that. One issue, last Chair, is the issue of 30 Rand vouchers that Honorable Mutwedi raised. I would leave it to the COVID-19 team that was working on this. It is a disgrace if it is there. I have not had face as a farmer myself. A 30 Rand voucher has nothing, you can't be spent even on your workers for food. And therefore it is an issue that perhaps we would like to answer it in short of your time. I think Mayor Sehole, we ran away on the question that was raised by Honorable Kapa, were the ratios planned or were they an accident? And I think that's the question we're going to be answering later or not. Chair, I think with that, we can depart and without wasting the time of the committee, and where we have missed the mark, we will then, Chair, be corrected. Thank you, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, DG Mike Mlengana, for the responses that the officials of the department have provided. I have a question that was on the BRRR report. There were no responses to. If we can be able to have that in writing, I'm mindful of time, in the sense that we still have a presentation to be made, which Honorable Mahlatsi alluded to. And we also have the presentation from the ARC to engage with. Let me, because of time, honorable members, request that we hop on to the two presentations to be done together. So we will start with that of the audit outcome, and then the ARC. And once those presentations have been dispensed with, we'll give 10 minutes per presentation, so that we can have 20 minutes of questions and then 20 minutes of answers. With that said, honorable members, I will hand over to the DG.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Order or point of clarity. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. My question around the underspending of the 50 million was not answered. He just browsed through it, but it was not answered. Could he please do that when he answers on the in writing?
Yes, I'm mindful, honorable members, get answered. And therefore, this is why we always request that all the questions must be responded back to us in writing, so things have not been properly dealt with, and we can do follow-up questions on that. Be mindful also that we are restricted in terms of time with these virtual meetings, that we are unable to have second bites on the question. So in trying to manage time well, we ensure that all the engagements that we have had with the department and its entities, we are able to therefore request these questions to be sent back to us in writing. If they are not dealt with orally, then we can be able to have written submissions, and we can be able to go through them at our leisure. I hope that suffices, Honorable Mbabama. Let us therefore move on to the presentations. DG.
Thank you, Chair. I would ask again the CFO or our internal audit to do the presentation on the audit outcomes of on the audit from Matrix for DAFF. Joe, who was going to lead on that?
DG.
The CFO.
Can I ask that the presentation be put on the slide? On the screen, sorry.
Alicia?
Yes, sir. There's a problem trying to, I can't have access, I don't have access to this at the moment. I'm just trying to get hold of IT to sort it out now, because it doesn't want to give me access to download the presentation.
Okay, can we ask the IT to assist, and also ask the Secretariat if on our side we are able to upload the presentation? Can someone go ahead? Then we can be talked through from slide to slide. Is there anyone from IT? Or if the Secretariat has the presentation, can you indicate if you are able to upload it and take us through slide by slide on the instruction of the presenter? Anyone of assistance, IT, the Secretariat, can you indicate if you have the presentation and if you are able to upload?
So it's Bradley here from Parliament IT. I do not have the presentation. I think the lady, Alicia, is not from Parliament. I think she was referring to her own IT that would assist her.
Okay.
Chair.
Chair,
can I suggest something? Can I suggest that ARC continue, and then I'll try and, or I see something is happening.
Thank you. We can proceed. There is a slide that is up.
But that's not the correct.
An attendance register from what we see. Mamkakaza Manyamza. Mamkakaza Mamnyamza.
Chair.
Nipi.
Chair.
All right. Is this your slide that you've put up, or is someone taking charge of this?
Can I ask that we go to the top of the presentation?
We had the presentation right now. Who was uploading that presentation?
It should be the department chair.
Okay, the challenge is on their side. Someone just uploaded the presentation and now it's off. Who was in charge of that?
I think it's the department chair.
It must have been Alicia, I think.
No, honourable members, I can't. There's IT problems on our side here.
There was a presentation through you, Chair. There was a presentation that came on the screen.
Yeah.
All that stated, okay, was it to just be reshifted to make sure that the first slide is what we present on. Where is that? Who did that? Somebody did that, please.
Is it Sule? No, I'm not.
Honorable Chairperson and members, I just asked Mr. Alicia to send me the presentation, then I'll load it from my side.
Okay.
Chair.
Alicia has been sent.
Chairperson, can I continue with my request? Can I ask maybe the ARC to present, and then I will also try and upload it from my side.
Okay, proceed. Can we proceed?
And let me check.
The ARC.
I read CFO. I read the CEO of the RC. Yeah, there it is.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, honorable members, DG and colleagues, and Minister in absentia. I have with me the CFO of the ARC, as well as the risk manager for the ARC, as well as the senior manager responsible for managing our internal audit service providers. Our presentation, we've given you a documentation that has 3 parts in it. The first part is the main presentation that will be made by the CFO. The rest is for your information. The second part is the detail of what the CFO presents. The third part is the verification by the internal audit. So we will only make the presentation by the CFO, and then we will answer the questions. So that is from slide 1 to slide number 17. CFO.
Okay, thank you, CEO, and good afternoon, honorable members. In terms of the presentation, are you going to control it from your side, CEO? The slide number 3 to 12, this is what the committee has seen before. So we can then move to slide number 13, which is section 3, which states AIP status or progress against the qualification paragraphs. Yes, thank you. Status of the work that we have done as the ARC against the qualification paragraph which were outlined in the auditor's report last year. And just to indicate that all that we're presenting on in terms of the performance and the progress, all of them are aiming towards the ARC getting an unqualified audit outcome. So the status that we are providing is as at Thursday last week, when we were requested to submit the presentation. The first issue there were that within our asset register, there were assets that were sitting at 0 and 1 rand values, which were still being used by the ARC. So we have assessed the useful life, we have done the residual values. Currently, the information exists outside of the ERP system. We are in a process of updating our ERP system to make sure that our fixed asset register at an asset level has got all the information or the work that we have done to date. In terms of paragraph number 4, it was relating to the assets that the ARC got when the assets were transferred from the old DAFF to ARC when it was established. Those assets were carried at 1 rand value, and we needed to attach the deemed cost. We have worked on that, and I can confirm that we are in a process of updating the accounting records as well. And then in terms of paragraph number 5, last year there was a challenge in terms of providing supporting documentation, which was acceptable to the auditors. We have since compiled the necessary supporting documentation, and the files are ready to be submitted to the auditors. Then on paragraph number 6, it was the issue where the ARC fixed asset register had some differences as compared to the financial statements. We have done a 100% asset verification process, and within that process, we have identified some legacy balances or assets that were sitting on the asset register, which either needed to be scrapped or written off. We have submitted the submission to council, which was approved last week Friday, to scrap those assets. So from here forth, the asset register for the ARC and the financial statements will be aligned in terms of the balances. If we move to the next slide. The next slide, there was an audit finding relating to biological assets. Paragraph number 7, CEO. Maybe let me continue talking through it. There was an issue regarding how we have accounted. On my side, it's still showing. It's still showing the first slide. The next slide. The one that starts with the biological asset inventories. But it's fine, I can continue talking while you are moving to that.
Can you see it now?
There was no, unless if it's my
We are
on my
on
side.
slide 14 now, so if you can speak to the number of the slide, we can all be on the same page. What is add now is slide 14.
Oh, okay, because on my side I can only see slide 13. Okay, I can see 14 now, thank you. Yes, there was an issue relating to the biological assets, because in the past, the ARC, we used to account for livestock as inventories, and we never had the vineyards and the orchards on our accounting records. I can confirm that the biological assets valuation has been done for the livestock, for the vineyards and the orchards. When we submitted the presentation, we were sitting at 9 finalized reports. I can confirm that as at today, we've got 12 valuation reports, which relates to the vineyards and the orchards that we have at within the Nelspruit campus and also the Stellenbosch campus. So that process is finalized. The reports are ready. We are in a process of updating our accounting records. With regards to the biological asset valuation for livestock, it's being finalized, and I can confirm that by Friday or by the end of this week, the accounting records would have been updated accordingly. Then it also deals with the issue on paragraph number 8 on the livestock, which was accounted for as inventory. We changed the accounting policy of the organization, and that was approved by council during the 2020 financial year. And for the 2020 financials, when we prepare the financials, they will be accounted for as biological assets for those that qualifies for to be accounted for biological assets. And then in terms of the inventories, we did the inventory count, and all the system challenges that we had in the past relating to inventories has been resolved. We can then move to slide number 15. On slide number 15, the first one, which relates to paragraph number 10, there was an issue with the auditors, which the auditors raised regarding other payables. This relates to the WIP, which basically deals with the project accounting that we follow as the organization. And we have cleared all the, and I can confirm that the issue is resolved, and wherein the balances have been transferred to income received in advance, we have made sure that all the necessary supporting documentations are filed accordingly. So this is also in progress, but it has been resolved. The 5 WIP accounts that we had on our GL has since been closed to make sure that no one uses that. Then the issue relating to paragraph number 11 on payment received in advance, we have done a review, a self-review as finance to make sure that all the deposits that have been paid and the payments received in advance, they are accounted for accordingly. And in terms of paragraph number 12 is issues relating to unrecorded liabilities that has been reviewed, and we are in a process of finalizing the update on the accounting records. So if we move to slide number 16. On slide number 16, what we have done this year to address that qualification paragraph 13 was that we did a debtors confirmation twice a year to make sure that if there are any balances that are being disputed by any of our clients, those are raised timeously, and then we update the accounting records accordingly. And whilst I'm talking about this point, I can confirm to the committee that we have since received 50 million from DAFF out of the 70 million that we used to refer as the old DAFF debt. So 50 million has been received. A confirmation has been sent in writing to the committee by the CEO. Then on paragraph 14, we had the issue with the staff debtors. A lot of work has been done. The balance reduced from last year. We were sitting at 13.6 million. It has been reduced to 6.8 million. And we have raised a provision for doubtful debt so that there is no audit finding in that regard relating to the debt. But I can also confirm that we will continue with the collection process, even though we've provided for it. Number 15, the WIP accounts, it has been resolved. We will not have a situation where we had to set off the 2 balances. Then in terms of number 16, the overstatement of accounts receivables, that will be or have been addressed or eliminated by the performance of the debtors confirmations, which I'm indicating that it was done every 6 months. Then we can move to the next slide. Yes, slide number 17. On slide number 17, I'll talk through all those paragraphs just to indicate that the issue was the acceptability of the supporting documentation which we submitted for audit purposes. We have engaged with the external auditors who have agreed on the format, and the matter has since been resolved. We are working on making sure that we file all the necessary information on a central point. I will end here, Chairperson, and then we'll take questions in terms of the remainder of the presentation. Thank you.
Chair and honorable members, that concludes the presentation of the ARC on the audit improvement plan. We are ready for any questions on these particular issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take the presentation from the department on the audit outcomes. DG.
My hands is up.
Are we ready? Alicia?
Yes, DG.
Whose hand is up?
Mr. Mule is putting it up, DG.
Okay.
Can I continue, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Chairperson,
Yes, please continue.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please, colleagues?
they've already taken.
We've got the table of content,
I can bring it.
and then we've got acronyms. Can we go on?
Please go directly to the issues. We have 10 minutes only for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Here we got as a department, which was a qualified opinion, and then we also talk about the basis of why there was a qualified opinion. Let's move to the next slide.
Please switch on your video. Honorable members can't see you. Please switch on your video.
Can I continue, Chair?
Switch on their video. Yes, switch on your video.
Can we go back to the previous slide, colleagues?
CFO, they are asking you to switch on your video.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Yes, on this slide, we talk about the action that was taken within the department and the dates that we needed reports from the different branches. Let's go on. Continue, colleagues. And then here we've got a summary of the audit findings as per the audit metrics. There was an issue around the invoices not being paid within 30 days. And I think the one challenge that we have had as a department for the past 3 years is around issue of budget constraints. But we have tried at all times to keep the payments within 30 days at 98%, as we can see there. All of the payments have been made within 30 days, except for 2%. Move on, colleagues. This is for IT. The finding was around inadequate page management. Can we go to the action that we have taken? Next slide. Next slide, please, colleagues. And then there was an issue of late capturing of all categories of leave. Can we go on? I will talk about what we have done. This is the summary of what has been done. ICT has implemented the following. 2,300 servers have been moved to special LAN. Go back, please. And then updates were being investigated around ISO. And then we have obtained certificates, and then software has always been upgraded. And then outdated servers were decommissioned. Colleagues, whoever is controlling the screen is not running with me. Can you go back, please? No, not the previous slide. Yes.
Slide.
And thank you, Chair. And we have said under our corrective measures, that one has been finalized. And then the issue around the implementation of leave, the system was due for finalization by the 30th of September 2019. And then the leave reports were drawn, checked, and verified. And leave is captured, no leave is captured after termination of service. And then there was a circular that was issued to all employees regarding the submission of leave forms. For me, I would say this is still ongoing. Let's move on. Let's skip that one. I will go to what the department has done. Let's skip this one and that one as well. Move on. The corrective measures that we have done is that we have.
Slide 14, please. Can we have slide 14?
We have had meetings and quarterly meetings between commercial forestry management and regional planning offices to report on updates on compartments and harvesting schedules and losses. And also critical posts have been identified, but unfortunately there we have not been able to fill those posts. And then the plantations that are risky have been identified. And then we were supposed to have a workshop to unpack the standard operating procedure. I know that it didn't happen around October, November. It happened around March as a part of the preparation of the audit process. Then what we have also discovered is that the overall value of biological assets have decreased by 100 million because of the physical verification of compartments conducted by all regions. We can't say it's finalized, but the one issue is that there are regular reports that are provided. Action will always be ongoing. Let's move, and can we only go to corrective measures so that we save on time? Can you move on?
In 2 minutes, can we conclude?
Okay, Chair, let's move on. On that one, on the investigations not conducted around irregular expenditure, there's an ethics officer who's supposed to alert the Director General of any failures to respond satisfactory to the above request. And I must just admit from the department, we have not been able to finalize that. Let's move on. Continue, sir, ma'am. This one, the corrective measures, we had to appoint a SANAS accredited professional to verify our BEE status. And then the PPE branch through the Directorate has developed a draft framework. And also we have reassigned some of the DAFF officials to the PPME branch to strengthen the monitoring of projects funded by CASP. Can we move on? Move on this one. Can we then just stop there, please? One slide above. Let's talk about CASP is fine. And one of the corrective measures is that we have improved capacity within the CASP office, and then the NEP process are being reviewed through the review of the SOP, and that document was processed for approval by 31st of March, but I must just say that has not been finalized. Let's go down.
Can you conclude?
Okay, Chair, I will just stop there on the assumption that the members have gone through the report and the slides. Thank you, Chairperson.
And thank you, CFO. Honorable members, there is the presentation of the audit outcomes from the department, as well as that of ARC. We'll hop on to questions of clarity and then hand back to the department and the ARC for responses. Honorable Klappe.
Thanks, Chair. I will confine myself to the presentation by ARC. This presentation here, audit outcome for the department, was just too hectic for the presenter. Chair, let me applaud the ARC for a well-structured, clear audit improvement action plan. But Chair, I must also warn the entity, it will just remain a plan, a paper plan, just like that. And we will be interested to track progress on implementation of this, but they have done a wonderful work, I must say. Concern, Chair, is on slide 11, the root causes for repeat. When you look at those root causes, you do your SWOT analysis. All these are internal factors. And that is why I'm saying if they don't implement this, it will never fly. If over the years this has been repeated and these are things that are hampering progress internally, then this entity has to do something about this. I want to also know, Chair, from their colored plans coded, there's one initiative that was deferred. Whilst others are in progress and others has been attained. What initiative is this one that has been deferred and what are the reasons? On Kwanafatso ya Dikgomo, I want to know honestly from this entity, how does the fact that they are an implementing agent of the department affecting their stance on the mandate of the ARC? And I'm asking this because during the course of the year, Chair, they nearly collapsed. They were in the red financially. It was just a doubt whether this entity was viable because of the huge amounts that the department owed them. Are they willing still to continue being an implementing agent for the department? How does it affect them being ARC or their original mandate? And lastly, I want to know from them, are they viable currently? What is their financial health status? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlatsi.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also follow suit from Honorable Clapp in relation to the ARC to say, indeed, they've shown enormous progress in as far as preparing their audit report with regards to the audit findings. Much as they had challenges when we started in this 6th Parliament, but at least there's a clear indication of progress in terms of what they want to achieve. My worry is on the department itself. One, when you look at their audit outcome or their audit findings, they had 27 audit findings, 10 were repeat findings, 17 were new. in this report, the department only their focus or the work that has the finalized findings were only 9. That means, Chair, much is still to be done. All other audit findings are still outstanding. I mean, the negative audit is still outstanding, and they will be looking at their Q3 and Q4 audit. Quarterly reports. It's a clear indication that when the next 2019-2020 audit report is going to give us a whole lot of red. Now, I think that the committee must express its worry that the department shows no vigor in dealing with audit findings. And I want to know, Chair, from the committee, from the department, and I've requested this information even previously, that one, how many people are working in the internal audit of the department in terms of structure? At what level is their audit manager? Even risk management, to say part of the problems in this department is because they do not take risk management serious. Had they been able to take risk management serious, we would have had mitigating factors prior to us moving towards this negative audit finding. I also want to know who is in the risk management, at what level are they, and how many in that particular component are they? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mahlatsi. Honorable Stein, if she has been able to join us. If not, we'll go on to Honorable Mbabama.
Chair, I'm not seeing her.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have much to say except to echo Mentlape's words that the ARC seems to have got their ducks in a row at last. And I just hope that they will carry on with the implementation. It will be proven to see when we compare the next year's performance on how well they have implemented their plan. But I must say that it is a very good plan, and the lady who presented it did very well. Now, coming to the department, it's a different case altogether, Chair. There has been very poor performance in the implementation of the corrector sense that, the audit outcomes were taken seriously. And without wasting a lot of time, Chair, I think we can all see where the department has not really applied its mind. So I will leave it at that, but I am disappointed in the department's performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mbabama. Honorable Matias, if he has been able to join us. If not, we'll have Honorable Montwedi.
Honorable Matiasa has not joined, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Montwedi. Honorable Montwedi.
Yes, can I continue?
Yes, please continue.
The department has been conducting some investigations on the 16-17 financial year. There was about that was wasted, and about 26.9 million in the 18-19 financial year. I just want to check on the side of the department, how far are they with those investigations? Because it looks like investigations are conducted and there is no finalization on the matter. We don't get to hear that money has been repaid or people have been successful. Prosecuted.
Honorable Muntwedi, we seem to have lost you. If you can kindly send your message.
Sorry, I've got a serious network problem in my village.
We realize that you are challenged due to your network. Please send your question in writing and I will ask it on your behalf. I hope you got that, Honorable Muntwedi. Send us your question and I will ask it on your behalf. Let us move on, honorable members, to Honorable Kapa.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. One, there is this issue of which is usually a bone of contention between the department and the auditors. I wish that maybe there should be a serious effort to ensure that this is removed or clarified so that there should be no misunderstanding, because it will always affect the audit findings for the department. And then secondly, it is also interesting that for the department, they should always know why they are unable to finalize the things they have not been able to finalize, so that if they know, they will make us know. This will also empower everyone to be able to see what is supposed to be done. Otherwise, the efforts, especially of ARC, which I think maybe the department can proudly claim, these are the efforts which are positive, which are encouraging, but also it is important that all those parts which are a little bit weak, they should be strengthened, and so that this work of working with the auditor and making audit performance to be improved should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kapa. Honorable Marco.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to also join others that have commented the Agricultural Research Council. Now my question will be on slide 11 on the policy and procedures which are not timeously reviewed and not constantly applied throughout. The department explains that the data interventions as done and policies and procedures were reviewed and approved by the council and the executive management committee. How will the council ensure that there is indeed continuous monitoring and evaluation on compliance? The second question, Chairperson, which I'm also looking at, will be on slide 26 of the same CRC. The Auditor General indeed made findings of 62 findings against the council. And to date, the average progress has been achieved. As members have already mentioned that they've achieved certain things. Given the fact that those 62 findings related to supply chain management with more than 1 million in deviation, how effective are the investigation and intervention against reducing the number of negative audit finding against the council? I understand that they've presented a very good plan, which I think is giving us hope that this type of things will not be happening, but more clearly, one will want to understand as to whether really indeed the 62 findings will also be addressed. I've realized that they've presented a very good plan. I acknowledge that, but thank you very much. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Briet.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, maybe just to add, I am, shall we say, cautiously optimistic about the ARC's audit plan. I think they realize what they need to do, but I would like to see that it is not just lip service and that they actually do that. Chairperson, maybe I think Honourable Montwedi and I had picked up the same thing, so hopefully I will cover him with my question. In terms of UIFW, there was an amount of 2.3 million rand from the 2016-17 financial year outstanding, or the investigation is outstanding in terms of fruitless and wasteful expenditure, in terms of drought relief, that went for animal feed, but that was never delivered. Furthermore, also continuing with fruitless and wasteful expenditure, an amount of 26.9 million for the 2018-19 financial year for veterinary mobile clinics and travel. That has also not been finalized. If the department could maybe just elaborate on that as to where are they in those investigations and when do they foresee those being completed, because that is quite severe, as they are repeat findings and they have been a long time coming. Chairperson, then maybe just to add specifically on page 6, the department talks of suppliers that fail to declare their relationship with employees of the department and falsify their SBD4 declarations. And they also mentioned that the problem is that they do not have an integrated systems in terms of checking CIPC and the works. How far are they in integrating a system? Is there plans on the table? What timeframes are we looking at? And what measures will they take in terms of suppliers and employees to not see that we have this problem where we have falsified documents just so the suppliers can do business with the department? I think that puts the department in a very bad light. And then in terms of, as Honourable Mahlatse has also said, I'm very worried that we have 17 new additional findings, only 9 are being completed. What is the time frame in terms of the other 2/3 of our of the investigations component that has not been completed? What time frame are we looking at for those investigations? And then, Chairperson, as well, how many years have those 10 repeat findings? Have they been repeat findings? Because it seems to me as if it's been not 1 year, but 2, 3, or multi-years. And how will we in future ensure compliance, that we do not have 27 or more repeat findings in the next year, specifically taking into account that this is now a merged department and Dr. DLR has had his own challenges. I'm very scared to see next year's audit outcomes and to see that we have actually regressed even further. Chairperson, that would be then my questions. Thank you so much.
Ndabezitha, Honorable Inkosi Cebekulu.
Yes, there's no question or follow-up comment on the matters as I take a chair.
Honorable Masipa, are you still with us? I'm mindful of time, honorable members. If we can be able to take it from here. We have already 20 minutes remaining, and I had set aside 10 minutes for response on ARC and 10 minutes from the department. But also let me applaud the presentation on part of the ARC, particularly with the debt that has been paid, at least 50 million of it, with the balance of about 21 million rand still remaining if we are still working at the 71 million debt that was put to us. I would like to ascertain as to what indications have been made or put forward to the ARC in the final payment of the balance of this. Will it be attended to in this current financial or fiscal that we are about to embark on? If so, can we get an indication? But also in terms of the questions Honorable Montwedi was asking in terms of the investigations carried out, what has been the findings on those investigations. Those culprits that were suspects, have they been suspended? Have they been put through a fair trial? And has there any prosecution been held? And if found guilty, have they been sentenced? But also in terms of the investigations on the monies, if there's been any monies that have been recuperated in terms of the investigations that were carried out, or what were the findings in terms of the finances. That would be all on my side. Let me hand back to the department to answer the questions. DG, you have 9 minutes, and then we will give 9 minutes to the ARC. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and honorable members. Let me be the first one to admit that the area of compliance in the department in general, especially SCM compliance, has never been attended to. The consequence of that is that we had to write letters to managers to ensure that there is a change in behavior, giving warnings. It was a lot of these findings are repeat findings, and they are occurring within departments, within sub-departments of the department, and some of the branches of the department. And the external and internal audit is not the fact that they do not have capacity per se. They raise these issues regularly, and we write to the management every time. Now, the only thing that is left that I've done was to write a letter of warning to the managers about these particular findings and the repeat findings. And that letter is going to the minister. The second part is the issue that deal with, let me just check, is the issue that deal with the 16, 17, 18 investigation. That came out of the Auditor General's findings, and it dealt specifically with fisheries. And that we have already dealt with that case deeper, and the monies are being recovered. People have gone through disciplinary. It became controversial. It was all over because it involved quite a lot of other people. And the Auditor General, in fact, almost took it over because he did not want. It was almost not going to go through disciplinary, and we made sure that it go through the disciplinary processes. People's pensions have been attached to ensure that we recover the monies as far as fisheries is concerned. The other one is the issue around CASP, and in Northwest we know what happened there, and we know what happened in the Free State with respect to the abuse of CASP, and investigation is ongoing there. And by National Treasury and our internal audit, the expectation was that it was going to be finalized before we go over to the new department as a merged department. Similarly, with land care in respect of drought, a lot of money was taken, about 100 million disappeared, and we have instructed the investigators at former Dr. DRR to do investigation because we did not have capacity there. Forestry, we also had people who were owning forests, especially in a place called Mtlabia Lingana, and those were forests that belong to the department. And we put investigations on those, and those were also the findings of the Auditor General. So those investigations, one hopes that they will be finalized very soon. The issue of biological assets, and unfortunately, is related to forestry. And as far as we are concerned, that area is no longer going to be part of us. And I think the management at Forestry have done a lot of work, and they had capacity issues. The issue of mobile clinics, I think I would leave that with the CFO and drought. And I'm sorry, with the CFO, and I'm sorry, not with the CFO, with Mr. Ramasodi and the CFO. Well, that issue we have already been addressing and ensuring that that issue we actually resolve it. Let me check. But the issues generally of repeat findings and irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure in DAFF has been an issue that has been ongoing all the way, and managers have not put attention to it regularly. We have therefore had to make sure that there is consequence management there. And it's an
Honorable
issue
members,
someone to
can I
look at.
request you to put your phones on silent and also mute your microphones. We are having a disturbance from a phone that is ringing. Please put your phones off. Proceed, DG.
And lastly, I think it's important that the issue of how much is actually owed to the ARC, the CFO clarifies that. How much have we paid? How much do we owe the ARC on KYD, and why not? And the second issue, and this is very important, as a total percentage of debt, how much is DAFF's debt to the ARC as a total percentage, as a percentage of total debt? Because the impression is given that it is DAFF or government that owes the ARC more. And the other second issue, Chair, that Honorable Chair, that I would like us to look at going forward is what is the growth point for the ARC? Is it the execution of tasks by government, or is it research? Is their revenue based on research? And if it is based on research, to what extent does that happen? And I've had discussion with the CFO on this, with the CEO on this. So maybe let me just say, with your permission, quickly, within the minutes that you have given me, ask Mr. Ramasodi to deal with the issue of mobile clinics, because that specifically is an area where we have put actions together. The issue of the ARC in CFO, I would like you to talk to that. The issue of conflict of interest when it comes to supply chain management, I would also like you to respond to it quickly. Thank you, Chair.
3 minutes remaining. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members, DG. The issue of the mobile clinics has been referred for legal action because we couldn't retire. Thank you.
Yes, CFO, could you just assist on the issue of how much did we pay to the ARC and how much do we owe to the ARC? Because I hear different numbers, so that the honorable members can know what is it that we owe the ARC now.
Thank you, DG.
Yes,
the amount that we owe ARC before the payment of the 55 million, before the payment of the 50 million, was 55 million according to our records. Now, there were orders that were not received from the ARC, and the two teams from supply chain of both entities have been working on solving those. And I must just also indicate that we have verified another 8 million that we have agreed, that I've agreed that we must pay over to ARC, because we have supporting documents for that 8 million. So it will mean that we would have paid 58 million to ARC. According to ARC, their record shows that we owe them around 73 million, and ours at that time was saying it's 55 million. So there's that difference that we are still trying to solve as the two teams. Then the issue of the SPD form, where the employees are not being listed as part of the suppliers. I just need to indicate that on the SPD forms are filled by the suppliers themselves, and then how we pick that's when we go through PESAL. Indeed, the integration of the system is still a problem, but one of the things that the ICT has said is that we need to work with Treasury to solve, especially the Treasury-led systems. Okay, Chair. The last one that I will talk about is the one on the amount owed of 2.3 for drought relief. That also is with the legal team. I know that the legal team was going to serve summons on the supplier. Thank you.
Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, DG. We will also check with the ARC in terms of the variance in the debt, and we would like assistance in settling that debt. Over to the ARC, you've got 9 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and honorable members. We will try our best to respond in the time allotted to us, and we take note of the comments of the committee, the implementation of our audit improvement plan. We are hoping that when we submit our annual financial statements and the evidence, the external auditors, being the Auditor General, will agree with us on all the matters that we have actually corrected. What we presented to you is work that has also been verified by internal audit service providers. I want to also add that we also got the Auditor General to conduct an interim audit for the first 6 months of the financial year, and they gave us their findings, and we have been working at correcting those particular findings so that we can make sure that by the time we submit once more, things are in order. Yes, the issues around root causes, some of those are internal, some of those have to do with the equipment that we have. We have been working on that, and we have been solving that. That is why some of those require changes in policies and procedures. As management, we have put together the right policies and the procedures, and we have taken them through the board, which is the council, to have them approved. They have been approved, and we are now effecting all of those particular changes according to those particular policies and procedures. I have to point out, Chair and members, that we reported to the committee that on the S&T that is owed by employees, some of the employees, particularly from Solidarity, had taken us to court because when we were trying to recover those funds, they objected to us recovering those funds from them. But we are still working on it. We have reduced the amount from about 15 million to about, I think it's about 3.7 million that is still outstanding. But that includes former employees of the ARC. So we will use other measures to try and chase those that have left the ARC. On the KYD, honorable members, it is an important project or program from our side as the ARC because we believe it is important for the development of our farmers. But it has a reputational risk in the respect of the ARC if we are unable to implement it because of shortage of funding. So it is important that we have a proper, seamless relationship with the department in order for us to make sure that we are able to continue to implement this particular project. So we continue to engage and discuss with the department to assist us in making sure that it gets done properly. I will leave the commentary around the financial health to the CFO in respect of the projections as at the end of the financial year. We take note on the comments around the biological assets. It's not an easy area. We have had to get a set of experts. Remember, there are certain aspects of some of our biological assets that we can use for purposes of production. And there are other aspects that are actually purely experimental and research. We have to isolate those, and that's not been very easy. But it seems so far from the work that's been done, it seems to be fairly in good order. Allow me, Chair, for the CFO to make comments on the effectiveness of our SCM investigations, as well as on the financial health. In respect of the outstanding debt, we have submitted, Chair and members, an update report in writing this morning to the committee. The amount that is stipulated by the ARC is the amount that was verified as the amount as the debt that is owed by DAFF to the ARC. But needless as it may, we continue to engage with the department. What we have reported as the amount paid is as verified in terms of the amount paid by the advice from the department as well as from the bank, Chair. Perhaps if the CFO can then respond on the other matters. Thank you, Chair.
And what is the 2 minutes remaining?
Okay, CFO.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick one. In terms of the one action that has been deferred on our audit improvement plan is the social and ethics training. And the reason why we deferred it is because the term of council is coming to an end. We wanted to align that to the new members that will be joining the ARC. And then the issue of the financial viability, there's a huge improvement relating to the financial viability. However, there are some structural issues within the ARC. The major cost of the ARC is personal cost, which is currently absorbing between 90 to 100% of the operational grant. And we are in the process of addressing those initiatives. We've got a turnaround plan, which aims to address personnel-related initiatives. And we also embarking on the rationalization of the campuses, which will ultimately reduce the fixed costs within the organization. And we also equally have revenue initiatives that we are currently looking at. So those are running parallel within the organization, and there has been a strict cash flow management. So even the cash of the organization has improved, and we continue to pay the suppliers as and when the invoices are due. And then with regards to the negative audit findings on deviation or SCM and also the investigation, this is something that we are continuously monitoring. We have disclosed what we have identified. Investigations continue to be conducted by our internal audit, and we continue to implement the recommendation as and when presented. Thank you.
Thank you, CFO, for the responses of the ARC as well as that of the department. Honorable members, we will request that all the questions that have been dealt with today and those that were not answered to be sent back to us in writing, not later than end of business day next week, Thursday. And also to take note that it comes with great sadness to us to receive the news of the passing of a member of parliament, the Honorable Dora Dunana Dlamini. Honorable Dlamini attended our virtual meeting in the National Assembly sitting yesterday on Tuesday, the 9th of June. She also had been able to be a dedicated public servant who served until her last moment. The Honorable Dlamini on Monday visited schools as part of her constituency work, that being on the 8th of June 2020, to assess the readiness for the reopening of schools, this being a clear indication that she served with dedication, a servant of the people. Let us, honorable members, send our condolences to her family, friends, and colleagues and comrades during this difficult time of loss. I will request you, honorable members, to take a moment of silence in her honor. I thank you.